This is my Komodo skate cam, I'm calling it. And instead of just getting all the footage and showing you up front like I did, and then going home and doing a talking head part, I'm trying to do a little bit of a walkthrough on the spot. It's a rig you only get from using, and it's something you would understand if you're trying to make skate videos or something really, really low profile. The way I've got it set it up is the RED Komodo with the 16mm RF lens and the wing grips on either side. We got the red volt batteries on the back, so we're just keeping it lightweight there, and no monitor. I'm just using the top monitor. When I'm operating it, I've generally been just putting my finger here and being able to pull focus like that. I'm also trying the autofocus, but overall I tend to use manual, and just having this ability to hold the camera like that with both hands, wing grip it, makes it pretty easy. A little more of a real world account instead of my curated talking head version, which I'll probably have to supplement. I'll definitely have to supplement, but for now, this is a different way to talk to the camera while we're recording. We came to South Beach because we knew that we would get some sun and skateability and some cool colors to make wides interesting. The 16mm is pretty wide, and it is an RF mount, so there's no crop or anything. That's actually what you're getting. It is a cheaper lens at $299. If you think it's weird to put a $299 lens on a $6,000 camera, you're right, it is kind of weird, but you gotta test it out and see what it's like. If you're wondering when to use this lens, I really am interested in using it like for buildings and stuff. You get these cool sweeping wide shots. On skates, you can get so much more motion than you could if you were just handheld. It's really fun. It's probably the POV of like riding out of a car, except it's a lot more controllable and you get a pan and have nothing in your way. I know this is like the third video I've done where I'm just skating and recording stuff, but this is very, very cool, and that's something I like to repeat. So hopefully you enjoy this type of stuff. If you do, like the video and subscribe to the channel. I wasn't talking to you, I was just doing a subscribe bit. Now, if you're wondering how I actually get those really low shots, it's usually getting into one of these and putting my butt on my own back wheel and aiming this way until I eventually run out of steam, because you really can't push off from there. But there's a rollerblading lesson no one on the camera channel asked for. You may be asking the question, why have a super wide lens for action stuff where I can just use a GoPro? You don't want to have one shot stand out as like your GoPro shot or even your drone shot. If you can always shoot everything on the same type of system, it's going to look more similar. It's not going to distract the audience if the quality changes or something like that. So here's a very direct comparison about how the GoPro looks compared to how the RED looks. They're not exactly the same focal length, they're not exactly the same shot, but they are pretty comparable. Something I'm used to with the RED is autofocus, which this lens can do and does do fairly well. It is, again, a wide lens, so it has a pretty bit easier time focusing on things, but if you look from the wide, zooming in, it does keep a person in focus with a little bit of hunting sometimes. But it is an RF lens, not an EF adapted lens, so I am kind of impressed that it's able to do this. It's another nice feature when you don't want to be racking focus.
So, like I said in the beginning,
which I'll probably have to supplement. I'll definitely have to supplement.
Here's me supplementing. I got too into the skate, but I have a few other things to talk about this lens and this skate rig. The weight of this setup is what makes it so desirable as a skate cam. This lens is 165 grams, which translates to just over 1/3 of a pound. That's insanely light. It's almost the weight of a phone. That's obviously the biggest factor in keeping the camera and setup smaller and lighter weight. It is a little plasticky. Lenses of this value are gonna end up being a little plasticky, but it doesn't feel cheap, and I do love the focus ring. It is smooth, it doesn't feel like you can send it spinning, which is often the problem on cheaper lenses. It has an odd thing that's on other lenses, I'm sure, but it's the first one I've owned and noticed it on. A little knob switch here to change from focus control to aperture control. So there's the one ring that can control both functions. I usually leave it on focus control because you can control aperture with cameras these days, but it is something that's there in case you would want to rack aperture. People do it. I wouldn't do it with this lens. Safety first. Quickly on the rig, these wing grips are kind of expensive. At $95 each, it feels a little, excessive for something that is quite literally a piece of metal, but everything I would get from RED I always do like, and I do love how these feel. Ideally, I think I'd run just the left one and then have my normal side handle on the right. If you've watched my minimalist RED rig, you've seen that and why I like it more. It does have a couple more features. Image quality is solid. I find it respectable for its price point. There's some issues with sharpness in the corners, which really has never bothered me because usually on a wide lens, I care about what's in the center of the frame. I did notice when shooting wide open some chromatic aberration, not all the time, but just sometime in certain scenarios of light, and that's to be expected, not exactly a deal breaker for me. It's something I'd have a larger issue with if the price tag was also larger. Again, this thing costs $299 for an RF lens. Something comparable in the zoom range is 4 times the price, so it's a different class of glass. The price was a big factor in why I got this lens and why I tried to do this type of a shoot with it. I'm a little less scared of bumping this into something than I am my larger glass, and the camera is more discreet when you have a smaller lens on it, which sounds obvious. But when you're filming in public parks, it's often easier to avoid the hassle by being low profile. It's not that we're doing anything wrong by shooting something there, but you just want to avoid the questions from security or whoever. Hey, what are you doing? It just isn't really worth the hassle. I don't have a big camera with a huge battery coming off the back and a big old lens up front, huge top monitor when I am in a public setting. You're gonna get someone to come over to you, a security guard, somebody, and ask, do you have a permit? What are you doing here? And even if what you're doing is completely legal and normal and fine and even not bothering anyone, someone will bother you, and it's often better to avoid the hassle in scenarios where you can use less equipment to get a good result. I did see a DJI Inspire get grounded while I was skating around Miami, so maybe leave your drones away from South Beach. So, do I recommend the Canon RF 16mm f2.8 lens? Yes, if you can find one. These things have been on back order pretty much everywhere. I got lucky and got mine through Sammy's a few weeks ago, but they are hard to find. But if you do find one, yes, I do think I recommend it at this point, especially if you're trying to use it something similar than I did in this video. Skate cam, crash cam, how the Komodo was originally intended to be used. This seems like a really logical lens to put into those scenarios. I do want to try throwing this on a gimbal. Obviously the lens doesn't have stabilization. With a gimbal, this whole setup is just a couple pounds. It could definitely fly easily. I just haven't gotten to testing it yet. No more supplementing. That's all I wanted to say about this lens. Thanks for watching. I'll definitely take it on the skates again in some capacity. Until then, until next time, and until next video, I'm off walking.